The column has stopped moving. Nobody ordered it to stop. That's the first thing the centurions notice. No trumpet signal, no command from the front. Just a slow, grinding halt, rippling backward through 20,000 people until the rear guard is standing in ankle-deep mud, horses straining sideways against their harnesses, men pressing into the backs of the soldiers ahead of them, and nobody knows why. It is September, the Teutoburg Forest, northwestern Germany. The light is failing early. The tree canopy is so dense that midday feels like dusk. Rain has been falling for 2 days. Not a storm. Something worse, a cold, relentless drizzle that soaks through wool cloaks and leather armor and doesn't stop. The column stretches for miles, 3 Roman legions. Auxiliary infantry, cavalry, supply wagons, camp servants, merchants following the army for trade, engineers, families. Wound together into a line so long that the rear cannot see the front and the front cannot hear the rear. A messenger pushes his horse through the press of bodies, moving forward. He passes centurions who are shouting at their men to hold formation. He passes supply wagons, tilted at bad angles in the ruts, wheels sunk to the axle. He passes soldiers who have stopped marching and are just standing there, shields resting in the mud, looking at the trees. The trees are very close on both sides, 10-15 meters at most. Beyond that, nothing. Just shadow and the sound of rain on leaves. The messenger reaches an officer near the middle of the column. He delivers his report. The officer's face does not change, but his jaw tightens. He turns and looks at the ridge above the path. The scouts who went ahead an hour ago have not come back. That happens. Scouts get turned around in unfamiliar terrain. They push further ahead to find good ground and lose track of time. It doesn't mean anything. Except the scouts who went to the right flank this morning haven't come back either, and the ones from yesterday afternoon. The governor of the Roman province of Germania sits on horseback near the head of the column. His name is Publius Quinctilius Varus. He is in his late 50s. An administrator, not a battlefield general, but an experienced man, a trusted man, a man who has successfully governed difficult provinces before. He has no reason to be alarmed. He is not alarmed. Riding just behind him is a young Germanic chieftain, perhaps 25 years old, who has served in the Roman military, holds Roman citizenship, and has been acting as Varus's local liaison and guide for this entire march. He speaks perfect Latin. He dines at Roman tables. He has been helping plan this route. His name is Arminius. Right now, Arminius is watching the ridgeline above the column. His expression gives nothing away. To understand why 20,000 Romans are standing confused in a German forest in September of 9 AD, you need to know one thing about how Rome operated at the height of its power. Rome did not just conquer territory, it absorbed it. The process was consistent. Move in with legions, establish military control, then send in administrators to build roads, set up courts, collect taxes. Within a generation or two, the conquered people stopped thinking of themselves as conquered. They became Roman. It had worked in Gaul. It had worked in Iberia. It had worked in Greece and Egypt and the Balkans. Every time. So when Augustus Caesar looked east of the Rhine at the Germanic tribes, he didn't see an impossible enemy. He saw the next province. He saw a problem that had already been solved everywhere else, and would be solved here too, with patience and the right administrators. That confidence was the first mistake. Varus arrived in the German frontier zone in 7 AD. He immediately began doing what Roman governors do, imposing law, establishing courts, levying taxes. For 2 years, this produced grumbling, resentment, the occasional local dispute, but no armed resistance. The Germanic tribes seemed to be adjusting. What Varus did not know, what he could not see from his administrative headquarters, was what that resentment was doing in the forests beyond his reach. It was pooling, concentrating, being organized. By a man who had spent years inside the Roman system, learning exactly how to destroy it. Arminius was not an outsider to Rome, he was practically Roman. At roughly 10 years old, he had been sent to Rome as a diplomatic hostage, standard practice for the sons of allied tribal leaders. Rome took the children of foreign elites, gave them a Roman education, let them see the empire's power from the inside, and sent them home. The idea was straightforward. A man who grew up in Rome would spend his life helping Rome. For Arminius, that plan appeared to work perfectly. He learned Latin, he served in the Roman auxiliary forces, likely in the Balkans, and performed well enough to be granted a senior officer's rank, and eventually Roman citizenship. He was sharp, capable, and completely trusted. Roman commanders who worked with him wrote positively about him. When he returned to his homeland and took a leadership role among the Cherusci tribe, the Romans saw exactly what they wanted to see: an ally, a bridge between worlds, a man who could help smooth the transition of Germania from frontier territory to Roman province. Varus trusted him completely. Arminius dined with the governor. He rode alongside Roman columns. He shared intelligence about tribal movements. He was, by every observable measure, exactly the kind of Germanic leader Rome needed. Nobody asked what he thought of the men whose taxes Varus was collecting. Nobody asked what he was doing in the forests at night. In the summer of 9 AD, Arminius told Varus that a tribal rebellion was forming in a distant part of the region. He had heard the reports himself. The uprising needed to be suppressed before winter. And he knew a route, more direct than the standard road, cutting through the Teutoburg hills, that would get the legions there faster. He offered to guide them personally. Varus gave the order to march. The column moved out in late September, 3 full legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, plus auxiliaries, cavalry, and the full sprawl of a Roman army on the march, perhaps 20,000 people total. In open terrain, on a Roman road, this force was almost impossible to destroy. The legionary infantry could form battle lines in minutes. Cavalry protected the flanks. Scouts ranged far ahead and to the sides. Officers could see their formations and issue commands. All of that required open terrain. The Teutoburg hills are not open terrain. The Teutoburg of old runs in a series of steep ridges across what is now Lower Saxony in northwestern Germany. The ridges rise sharply, the valleys between them are low, boggy, and prone to flooding in autumn rain. The trees are dense, the paths between them are narrow, often single file for horses, barely 2 abreast for infantry. The column entered this terrain and immediately began to compress. What had been a force capable of spreading laterally, cavalry on the flanks, infantry in 4-man wide files, scouts ranging outward on both sides, became a line. A single 20-mile-long line winding through trees. The flanking scouts went into the trees on both sides of the path and stopped reporting back. An officer marked this in his mind and said nothing. What was there to say? Scouts lose contact with the column in dense forest. It happens. There was no enemy activity, no reports of hostile movement. Arminius, riding near the front with Varus, had seen nothing alarming. The rain started heavier on the 2nd day of the march. The path, already soft, turned to liquid mud. Supply wagons began to slow. When a wagon slows, the men behind it slow. When men slow, the column stretches. When the column stretches, the gaps between units grow. Centurions pushed their men to close the gaps, which meant infantry in full armor and kit, carrying javelins and shields, were now also carrying the men who'd gone down beside them. Twisted ankles, exhaustion, men sliding off the path into the undergrowth. The cavalry was useless in the mud. Horses couldn't maintain formation between the trees. The riders pulled back toward the main column, which meant the flanks were now completely unguarded. Nobody had fortified the previous night's camp properly. The ground was too wet to dig. The trenches collapsed as fast as they were cut. Varus had issued orders to continue at pace. They would reach open ground soon. Arminius had told him so. On the morning of the 3rd day of the march, Arminius told Varus he needed to ride ahead. He had Germanic riders of his own, auxiliary cavalry loyal to the Cherusci. He would range out, check the route, make sure the path ahead was clear. Varus agreed. Arminius turned his horse north, away from the column, and rode into the trees. He did not ride back. What the Romans could not see from their narrow path between the trees was what existed on the other side of the ridgeline. Thousands of men. They had been there for days. Some had been there for weeks. Warriors from the Cherusci, the Marsi, the Bructeri, the Chatti, tribes that had spent generations competing with each other, tribes that shared old grievances and blood feuds, all of them waiting, silently, on the slopes above the Roman column. Getting this coalition to happen was, by itself, extraordinary. Germanic tribes did not naturally cooperate. They raided each other. They did not form armies. They formed war bands, each following its own chieftain, each dissolving after a season. Arminius had spent 3 years changing that, one conversation at a time, one feast, one oath, one promise at a time. He told the chiefs what Varus's courts were doing, taxing their people, overriding their traditional dispute settlements, treating their authority as subordinate to a Roman bureaucrat's paperwork. He reminded them what had happened in Gaul, first a governor, then roads, then tax collectors, then permanent Roman garrisons, and then, 1 generation later, their grandchildren would be Roman subjects who had forgotten they were ever anything else. He offered them a different ending, and he offered something more immediate. He had chosen the ground. He had walked the Teutoburg path himself, probably multiple times. He knew exactly where the corridor between the bog to the north and the ridge to the south narrowed to 100 meters. He knew where the Roman column would be forced to compress into a line so tight that no formation was possible. And along that ridgeline, over the previous weeks, his men had built earthen walls, low, thick embankments of packed turf that gave them protected firing positions overlooking the path below. The Romans had walked into a kill zone constructed specifically for them, and the man who built it had just ridden away from the Roman column, toward his waiting army. There was one man who had tried to stop this. His name was Segestes, a Cherusci nobleman, a Roman ally, and the father of a woman Arminius had taken against his wishes. Segestes went to Varus personally. He told the governor that Arminius was planning a trap, that the coalition existed, that the march was a mistake. Varus listened. Then he dismissed it. Not because he was reckless, because everything he knew about Arminius, every dinner, every patrol, every shared campaign, told him this warning was personal jealousy dressed up as military intelligence. The warning was from a man who hated his son-in-law. It was noise, so the column kept marching, and on the ridges above, Arminius waited for his moment. The Roman column reaches the narrow corridor near a ridge the modern world calls Calcrease Hill. The bog is to the north, the slope is to the south. Between them, 100 meters of muddy path. 20,000 people compressed into that gap. The Germanic warriors on the ridge look down and see the entire length of the Roman column spread below them like a thread. Arminius gives the signal. The spears come from above and from both sides at once. There is no warning sound, no drums, no war cries, not yet. Just the sudden whipping noise of several thousand javelins cutting through rain-heavy air, and then the impact, the wooden thud and metallic clang of iron points hitting shields and armor and men and horses and cartwood. The column explodes. Soldiers at the front have no idea what is happening at the rear. Soldiers at the rear have no idea the front has already been hit. The column is too long, the trees too thick, the noise too total, rain and screaming and stamping horses and the crack of wood under stress, for any single person to understand the scope of what is occurring. Centurions begin shouting for their men to form up. Form up, shields out, dress the line. It is training. It is instinct. It is the correct thing to do. And it is impossible. The path is too narrow. There are trees 6 feet to the left and a steep, muddy slope 6 feet to the right. A Roman century needs 60 feet of frontage to form a fighting line. They have 12. Men step on each other. Shields slam into tree trunks. Soldiers who pivot to face the ridgeline lose contact with the man next to them. The javelins keep coming. Not a charge, not a battle, a harvest. The cavalry attempts to respond. Somewhere in the press of bodies, officers are screaming for the horsemen to push out and break the attack. The horses can't move. The path is choked with infantry, with supply wagons, with the bodies of men who have gone down. A horse that tries to rear in this space brings down 2 more soldiers and blocks the path entirely. The Germanic warriors on the ridge watch this and wait. They know the Romans will try to charge the slope. It is what Romans do. Meet force with force, push through the attack, break the enemy's will with aggression. So the warriors on the ridge are not standing at the edge where they can be reached. They are behind their earthen wall 10 meters back, throwing from safety. Roman soldiers who break from the path and charge up the slope hit the wall and are killed by men standing on the other side of it. Some Roman units try to push forward through the column to reach open ground ahead. They are moving into the teeth of more warriors positioned further along the path. There is no open ground ahead. There was never any open ground. Arminius chose this location precisely because there is no escape route forward. The rear of the column tries to pull back. Those men are hit by warriors who had circled through the trees before the ambush began. The retreat route is sealed. By the time the light begins to fail, 4, maybe 5 hours into the ambush, the Roman column has lost cohesion entirely. It is no longer an army. It is 20,000 terrified people in a narrow corridor of trees, in the rain, in the dark, with no communication between units, no cavalry, no functional chain of command, and no understanding of how large the attacking force is or where it is coming from. The Germanic warriors pull back as darkness falls. Not in defeat, they are not pursued. They withdraw to their positions on the ridge and wait for morning. Below them, the Romans dig, or try to. The ground is so saturated that the trench walls collapse as fast as the soldiers cut them. Engineers try to build a palisade from cut timber, but in the dark, in the rain, without their full equipment, much of the tool carts have been abandoned or destroyed. It is slow and partial. The camp they build is nothing like a proper Roman fortified camp. It is a rough perimeter of mud and cut wood, sheltering perhaps a third of the total force. The rest hunker in the open, under the trees, in groups, waiting for dawn. Varus convenes his senior officers. The options are stark: push forward in the morning, retreat to the Rhine, build a defensible position and hold until relief arrives. The relief option dies quickly. No messenger has gotten through. Nobody on the Rhine knows this column is in trouble. It could be weeks before anyone realizes something is wrong. The retreat option is nearly as bad. The route behind them is thick with Germanic warriors. A retreat means fighting through an ambush for 20 miles, in rain, with wounded soldiers, broken supply lines, and no cavalry. They choose to push forward. It is the logical choice. It is also the choice Arminius expected them to make. The column moves before full light. Varus orders the march at the earliest possible moment. Every minute of darkness is a minute the Germanic warriors can reposition, tighten the trap, strengthen their positions ahead. The column moves, and the warriors move with it. They do not attack in a rush. There is no massed charge from the trees. That would allow the Romans to form a defensive line and use their discipline. Instead, the Germanic warriors keep pace with the Roman column through the forest, attacking its edges. Small groups hit exposed soldiers and pull back before the Romans can respond. They target the supply wagons, already slow, already damaged, and set several alight. They cut off soldiers who fall or stray from the path. Every hour, the column loses men at the margins. Not in great slaughters, in 1s and 2s and 5s, soldiers who fall behind. Soldiers who break from the path in panic and are caught in the trees. Wounded men who can no longer keep pace and are left where they collapse. This is not random cruelty. It is a system. Arminius knows that a Roman soldier who is maintaining formation can fight almost indefinitely. The same soldier who is isolated, who cannot see his unit, who does not know if he is surrounded or if rescue is coming, becomes ineffective within minutes. Fear, not steel, is his primary weapon on the second day. Mid-morning, the rain intensifies. The path that was mud becomes a stream. Men who are already struggling under the weight of armor and weapons and the physical cost of yesterday's fighting are now sinking to their knees in places. The wounded, already being carried or supported, become impossible loads. Officers make brutal decisions. The men who cannot walk must be left. The column must keep moving. Several officers order their soldiers to abandon the supply wagons entirely. There is no longer any practical way to move them. The draft animals are exhausted or dead. The wheels are buried. The wagons contain food, medical supplies, replacement equipment, and the payroll chests for 3 legions. They burn the wagons so the Germanic warriors cannot take the supplies. Black smoke rises over the forest. On the ridge above, the warriors watch the smoke columns multiply and understand exactly what they mean. An army that burns its own supplies has already accepted that it will not reach its destination. Some soldiers break completely. They leave the path and run into the forest, not toward any objective, just away from the column, away from the noise and the mud and the bodies. The Germanic warriors are waiting for exactly this. The men who break from the column are hunted individually through the trees. A few survive, crawling into dense undergrowth and lying still for hours or days. Most do not. By the afternoon of the second day, several unit commanders have lost contact with the main body entirely. Their sentries are isolated in the forest, moving independently, hoping to find the column or find the road to the Rhine. Some small Roman formations actually fight their way through the Germanic lines and escape. These survivors, who reach the Rhine weeks later in small, starving groups, are how the ancient historians later reconstruct what happened. The majority of the column reaches its second night camp in worse shape than the first. Fewer men, less food, less equipment, more wounded. Officers who should be commanding units are instead organizing the burial of soldiers who died during the march. One decision stands out from the second night's command meeting. The cavalry, what remained of it, is ordered to break out independently, ride for the Rhine, find help. A cavalry force, if it can get clear of the forest, can outrun infantry pursuit and reach Roman territory in a matter of days. The cavalry commander, Varus, leads them out under cover of darkness. The infantry watch them go. They know what it means. The cavalry is not coming back for them. There is no rescue. Whatever happens now happens to the infantry alone. Dawn on the third day. The column is a fraction of what it was. Men are missing from every unit, dead, fled, separated. The artillery is gone. The supply train is gone. Half the cavalry is gone. What remains is a compressed mass of infantry, their armor filthy and corroded from 3 days of rain, their sandals rotted through, their javelins mostly thrown or broken. They are marching. Because marching is what they know. Because stopping means dying where you stand, and marching means at least the possibility of open ground ahead, a place where Roman discipline can assert itself one final time. Ahead of them, Calchries Hill. The ridge rises steeply to the south, to the north a bog, dark, deep and impassable. Between them, the narrowest point of the entire route. Perhaps 100 meters of viable ground. The Germanic earthen wall runs along the slope of the ridge above this corridor. Arminius has moved his main force here. Everything that was designed, the route, the wall, the multi-day harassment, was designed to deliver the Roman column to this exact point, in this exact condition. Weakened, disorganized, trapped. The final battle is not a battle. It is an execution with resistance. Roman soldiers charge the wall. There is no other option. The bog blocks any northern movement, and the Germanic warriors have poured into the corridor behind them, cutting off retreat. Forward is the only direction that offers any possibility. The charges reach the wall. Some small groups get over it. Archaeological excavations at Calchries, the site confirmed in the 1980s and 1990s, have found Roman coins, weapons, equipment fragments, and human remains scattered across a wide area behind and beyond the wall. Some Romans broke through, most did not. Varus is wounded during the fighting. The exact circumstances are lost. With the situation clearly beyond any recovery, he makes the decision that Roman commanders of this era often made when facing capture by enemies who would not offer honorable terms. He falls on his own sword. When Varus dies, whatever remained of central command dies with him. Unit cohesion, already fragile, shatters. Soldiers who have been fighting in organized groups begin fighting individually, or not at all. Officers who might have maintained order are killed or separated. The column does not so much break as dissolve. Men scatter in every direction. Some surrender. Some are taken prisoner as they try to flee, captured individually in the trees, in the bog, on the slopes of the ridge. A few small groups break clear and begin the long walk toward the Rhine, living in the forest for days or weeks before reaching Roman territory. The cavalry that rode out the night before, Varus's force, is intercepted before it reaches the Rhine. It does not survive. By afternoon, the Teutoburg Forest is quiet. The Germanic warriors move through what remains of the column, collecting weapons, recovering equipment, taking prisoners, Roman swords, Roman shields, Roman helmets with their distinctive crests. 20 years of Roman military hardware gathered from the mud of a German forest. And 3 eagles. Each Roman legion carried a silver eagle, the aquila, as its sacred standard. Losing the eagle was the worst thing that could happen to a legion. It meant the unit no longer existed, a shame that followed the survivors and their families for generations. The Germanic warriors took all 3, the 17th Legion, the 18th Legion, the 19th Legion. Their numbers would never be reused. In the long history of Roman legionary numbering, dozens of units raised, disbanded, renumbered, reconstituted over centuries, those 3 numbers were retired permanently. A superstition, a scar, a reminder of what the forest had taken. The forest is quiet, not the quiet of an empty place. The quiet of a place where something enormous has ended and left no sound behind it. The birds have not returned yet. The rain has stopped. The mud is still. Between the trees, in every direction, there are things that should not be here. A sandal half buried in the slope, a dented bronze helmet face down in the leaves, a javelin shaft snapped clean and sticking up from the ground at a strange angle, like something planted. The Germanic warriors have gone. They took what they wanted. What they left behind is everything that was too broken, too heavy, or too Roman to carry. It is a lot. The men who make it out do not come out together. They come out alone, or in pairs, or in small groups of 3 or 4 who found each other in the dark and kept moving. They move at night. They sleep in ditches during the day, beneath fallen trees, in the roots of anything wide enough to hide behind. They are not marching. They are crawling west by instinct, toward the Rhine, toward the sound of Latin, toward anything that is not the forest. Some take a week, some take longer. When they reach the Roman forts on the western bank, the garrison soldiers who see them coming do not immediately recognize them as legionaries. They look like men who have been underground. Their armor is gone or rusted black. Their foot wraps are rags. Some are barefoot. One man, according to a later account, reaches a fort and cannot remember his own name for 3 days. The garrison commanders begin asking questions. They listen. They stop asking questions and start reinforcing the walls. Months pass before anyone knows the full shape of what happened. The 3 eagles are gone. The 17th, 18th, and 19th. Their numbers will not be used again, ever. In the long history of Roman legionary numbering, those 3 stay empty. A kind of scar kept open on purpose. Some losses you do not try to replace. The news reaches Augustus in Rome. He is in his early 70s. He has governed the Roman world for more than 3 decades. He has survived civil war and conspiracy and the deaths of every heir he chose before choosing the next. He is not a man who breaks easily. He breaks, not publicly, not in a speech or a proclamation. In the palace at night, where the servants can hear him moving through the corridors. Suetonius records what they heard, the emperor calling into the dark, striking his head against the walls. Varus, give me back my legions. He does not shave for months. He lets his hair grow long and matted, the way Romans mourned their dead. He wears it like a wound you can see. The legions are not given back. 6 years after the ambush, a Roman army returns to the Teutoburg Forest. It is led by Germanicus, nephew of the emperor, commander of the Rhine armies, a soldier who has spent his adult life on this frontier. He is not there to conquer. He has no orders to push east and hold the territory. He is there to find what the forest kept. They find it. The bones are everywhere. 6 years of weather have moved some of them. Winter rains washing them down slopes, animals carrying pieces into the undergrowth. But the shape of the disaster is still readable in the ground. The long, narrow corridor where the column compressed. The slope where men charged uphill into the wall. The low ground where the rear guard was surrounded. The bones of horses mixed with the bones of men. A soldier can walk the ground and understand, just from what he sees, how it happened. Tacitus records what Germanicus's veterans did when they arrived. They stopped walking. These were men who had seen the inside of dozens of campaigns. Men who had burned cities and crossed frozen rivers in winter and fought hand to hand in circumstances that would be unrecognizable to anyone who had not done it. They stopped walking and they stood in the corridor between the ridge and the bog, and they looked at the ground. The skulls of officers were nailed to the trees, still there after 6 years. The altars where the ritual killings had been performed were still standing in the undergrowth, the wood rotted but the shape intact. Along the slope near the wall, the earth had been disturbed and redisturbed by years of rain, and what the rain exposed in the cuts and gullies were Roman things. Buckles, boot nails, the edge of a shield, a corroded coin from a pay chest that burst open when the wagon burned. Germanicus ordered the burial, every bone they could find, every fragment. They built a turf mound, a Roman funeral mound, over the site. Germanicus placed the first clod of earth himself. The historians note this specifically. Not a general watching his men work, a general on his knees in German soil, burying soldiers who died before he could reach them. The army that watched him do this was silent. Not the silence of men who have nothing to say. The silence of men who understand something for the first time. 2 of the 3 eagles would eventually be recovered, taken back through campaigns and negotiations in the years that followed. The 3rd was never found. The eagle of the 19th Legion stayed somewhere in the forest, or buried, or melted down, or carried so far east that no Roman army ever came close to it again. Some things do not come back. The Rhine forts are reinforced after Teutoburg, more men, thicker walls, permanent garrisons where there had been rotating ones. The legions still patrol the river, they still cross it on raids, they still make their presence felt on the eastern bank. But the order that comes down from Rome and stays in force for the rest of Augustus's reign is the same. Hold the river, do not go back into the forest. East of the Rhine, the forest goes on. It goes on for a long time. The trees are indifferent to what happened beneath them. The ridges do not remember the wall that was built on their slope, the earthen embankment that Arminius's men packed by hand in the weeks before the column arrived. Rain has flattened it. Roots have broken through it. Deer cross where Roman soldiers charged and died. Somewhere in that forest, under the moss and the leaf litter and the centuries, there are still boot nails, still coins, still the corroded iron of Roman weapons that no one ever came back to collect. Still the bones of men who believed they were marching through friendly territory. They found the edge of something. They did not know it was the edge until they were already past it.